Hello once again, my friends. Thomas with Alpha Concepts. If you've taken one of my concealed carry training classes, you know that I am a strong proponent for less lethal options. Illinois law, and I'm sure laws of many other states, allow for simple force, what I like to call simple force, which would be a kick, a punch, a push, a shove, a slap in self-defense, as well as lethal force in self-defense. Not all use of force situations are lethal use of force situations. So we have to start right there. If you disagree, then let's have a conversation. If you punch me in the face and I shoot you, my lawyer is going to have a very hard time explaining why I felt my life was in imminent fear of death. Now, if you're beating me in the face multiple repeated times, that's a different ball game. But one punch, one slap to the face is not a lethal force situation. And I will be the first person to admit that, yes, people have died from one punch to the face. But if you got punched and you're still alive, you don't fit in that criteria. So we have to think about the fact that, again, not all use of force situations are lethal use of force situations, legally speaking, number one, and then morally and ethically speaking, number two. Now, everybody's got their own morals. I'm not going to stand here and dictate to you that you need to use less lethal force if lethal force is justified. That's your decision. Operate within the confines of the law. Anything else is up to you. But let me tell you this. Me personally, I don't want to deal with the aftermath of a self-defense situation. What I mean is, if you take someone's life, there are books written on the subject, and I've talked to people who have. If you take someone's life, it will change you. When we look at studies from like law enforcement who have taken a life in the active duty, you know, statistically something like 80% are crying and losing sleep about it, and I'm not looking forward to crying. 60% 6 months later are still crying and losing sleep over it. I'm prepared to use lethal force if I have no other choice, but if I have another choice, I'm going to take that choice. I don't want to get caught up in the criminal or the civil legal systems. Yes, I've got self-defense insurance. Yes, I am covered. I am protected, but there's no guarantee I'm going to win in criminal or civil, okay? So I'm quite literally risking my freedom. That's something you have to think about. And is it worth it? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Absolutely, sometimes yes. But again, we have to address sometimes no. So if you're like me and you believe that less lethal is an option, then let's talk about some less lethal options. Some of these things that I do myself. And I want to start first with a flashlight. You might be thinking a flashlight is not a weapon, but honestly, it definitely could be used as a weapon. When we sit here and we think about something like this, this is a very easily concealable flashlight. It's the ASP Scribe, okay? This flashlight is 300 lumens, and it's fairly bright. And a dark night, if I were to shine this in someone's eyes, unless they are a motivated attacker. If it's an attacker of opportunity who picked me out as their next victim, if I just simply shine that flashlight in their eyes, it's going to make them think twice, okay? Again, if it's an attacker of opportunity, yes. If it's a motivated attacker, a determined attacker, someone who really wants me specifically, then a flashlight might not make that much sense. But there are other types of flashlights. For example, this Surefire is 600 lumens. And it has a serrated bezel. That serrated bezel up against someone's temple is not going to feel well. So you can knock someone with this, or you can use it to punch someone. So absolutely, a flashlight can be a weapon. But it also has a lot of utility to it as well. So that's something you might want to consider as a less lethal option. You know, I've been to gun-free zones. I try not to go, but sometimes I have zero choice. I've never once seen a flashlight-free zone. So if you have some light on you, it's a good choice for a less lethal option. Here's another flashlight. This is an ASP, their Triad. This one also has a serrated bezel. Now this one's much larger. This is not really something that I would use for everyday carry, maybe in a car, maybe in a backpack, something like that. Again, has a serrated bezel. This one off the top of my head, I want to say is like 1500 lumen. I know that the light filter, the camera filters out the light, so you're not getting the full effect, but definitely 1500 lumen blast to the face, especially in the middle of the night, is going to make somebody think twice. The other thing about the light is if it's wide enough and if it's bright enough, then you can actually control and step off the X, because they'll be blinded, and as you're making movement, they might know you're moving, they might hear you, they might vaguely see some shadows, but they won't know exactly where you're at, which could help if they're intent on attacking you. So consider a flashlight as a less lethal option. I would minimum go with like 200 lumens, but honestly that's probably on the low side. Lumens is not everything. We can do a whole video on selecting a flashlight, talking about candela and lumens and these, that, and the other. So do your research before you buy a flashlight. Like I said, minimum probably 200 lumens, but realistically go brighter. I can tell you from experience that 600 lumen Surefire, that thing will blind you. So something to consider. Also, something else to consider is pepper spray. Now, I am a certified pepper spray instructor from Sabre. I think that they make some of the better pepper spray on the market. Pepper spray is another thing that, you know, you can really go into the weeds and have a very in-depth conversation about which pepper spray is better. This happens to be the 3-in-1. It has a marking dye, it has tear gas, and of course it has the pepper spray, the capsaicin. The marking dye is used for investigative purposes. It's hard to say it wasn't you who attacked this person when you're covered with red ink. So this one is a gel. I kind of sort of prefer gel. There's fogs, there's gels, there's foams. Gel kind of seems to be the best bang for the buck because a fog in an enclosed space is not going to be a pleasant experience for anybody. And in an outside setting, it could blow away, blow back on you. The foams, you know, there's pros and cons to everything. Take the time to do your research. I don't want to turn this into a how to select pepper spray video, but definitely things you want to consider. I'm going to say two things more about pepper spray. The first is, no one likes to hear this, but if you are going to carry pepper spray, take a hit of it. The reason I say that is because you need to know how it's going to affect you. If you spray someone with pepper spray and then get into a wrestling match, some of that's going to get on you. If you spray someone with pepper spray and it blows back at you, some of that's going to get on you. You don't want that to be your first time exposed to the pain of pepper spray, and it is not a pleasant experience. It is very effective in a vast majority of the population. So it would make sense for you to know how it's going to treat you. And like I said, no one wants to hear it, but you should take a hit of it. Now, disclaimer, if you're going to do that, you need to do it in a controlled setting. You need to have the decontamination soaps, wipes that are available on the market. If you're interested in that, message me and I'll talk to you more about it. No, it's not something that I'll do for you, but I can give you more information about it. So don't just blast yourself in the face home alone. That's not going to end well. It's going to be a very painful experience, but there are safety procedures that are necessary. The last thing I'll say about the pepper spray is that you might want to take a training class, okay? Do you need to? No. You can throw the pepper spray in your pocket. Of course, check the laws of the areas that you're in. Illinois allows pepper spray for people over the age of 18. You know, City of Chicago has ordinances about where and when you can use pepper spray, so you want to check that stuff out. But in our pepper spray classes, we do talk about staging it. Of course, we talk about situational awareness and all of those things that we talk about in our concealed carry class. We talk about how to deploy it, you know, so that you can effectively get that blast on target. You don't accidentally spray yourself, which could happen if you really haven't taken the steps. In our pepper spray classes, we also use tester cans. These tester cans are not spraying pepper spray. We put targets on the wall and we spray it with an exact replica of the pepper spray, but it's spraying simple water. So that's an option. The final option we're going to talk about today is to take a self-defense class. You know, I've been in and out of martial arts much of my life. I haven't gone in quite a while. I definitely need to get back into it, but that's a topic for another discussion as well. When I was in my 20s, I used to be in the dojo like 9 hours a week. In fact, that's where I met my wife. I remember my sensei, Jerry Weiss from Genki Karate, he brought in a Special Forces, ex-British Special Forces, and it was such an eye-opening seminar. It was totally worth the time and the money that I spent in that class. Even though I had been in the dojo, practicing karate. I really learned so much more in that one weekend, though, the application of the techniques that I learned. And in my concealed carry class, I always tell the story about how he asked me, what would I do if someone came up to me? And at the point in time of my life, I was in great shape, and I said, I'd roundhouse kick him in the head and knock him out. And he said to me that he probably never would kick anyone above the groin, and realistically probably never would kick anyone above the knee. And I was immediately turned off by that, because I had been practicing all this fancy hard techniques, flashy techniques, and he was basically saying I was wasting my time. So I was turned off by that until he explained why. And then he said to me, have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, went to the washroom, and on your way back to bed you hit your shin on something? And we've all done it, and it is painful as hell. And he said, well, what if I kicked you in the shin, punched you in the face, and took off running? That's something anybody can do. The point is, take a self-defense class, because you might not be able to have a firearm on you. You might not be able to have pepper spray on you. You might not be able to have a flashlight on you, but you can always have these. You can always have these on you. At the end of the day, you are the weapon. Your mind is your most valuable tool. Everything else is a tool. You've got to be, that's why we end all videos, be armed, be trained, be alpha. You've got to be armed with the tools. You've got to be trained on how to use those tools, but be alpha. You've got to have the willpower to use those tools. And if you don't have the tools available to you, then you are the tool. You know, when we talk about lethal force and we talk about like disparity of force, multiple attackers, a really large size attacker, that they are the weapon. You are the weapon. Be the weapon, okay? So think about some less lethal options. Not every use of force situation is a lethal use of force situation. The person who only owns a hammer thinks every problem is a nail, but not all problems are nails. Think about it like this. Some are screws and they require a screwdriver instead of a hammer, okay? Be armed, be trained, and be alpha. And get some less lethal training.